Oh! The person with the slides around. I'm so much happier now.
Is there, oh, yeah, okay.
Whichever side you'd like to sit on.
I'll sit here. Okay, this doesn't work. Okay, this doesn't work for me. Thanks, Eric. Hi, Joe. Maybe we chat afterwards. I don't think I'm not bringing that subject up in the meeting. The upstate stuff yet, but it's just a vanilla. Hi, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I can walk again.
Oh, I'm so thrilled. You were looking just miserable.
Yeah, that was really awful, but somehow a little bit self-induced. Too much dancing, not knowing that it was going to sit sick. It was like that combination. I've made some investigations around your transport, and I might have a set of solutions, and we might have to discuss a little bit.
Could we talk? That would be awesome. I mean, you've made my day. Please.
Yeah.
Can we talk afterwards? Because I'll go set up and go.
Okay.
I got your email. I think we're just being over-exuberant. Don't take it personally.
If that ever happens, I'm not going to stay in the meeting in 10 minutes. I have no business being interrupted every time I walk up and speak. Okay? I will not deal with that again. I don't normally get angry, but it was every time. I know they're being exuberant, but they didn't interrupt other people. And it is just a conversation between you and me. It is not the rest, but that was me being almost ready to tell them to go tomorrow. Because as far as I could tell, it was a woman thing. Okay, so that was me being pissed. I will be glad to talk further, but I'm just closing the literature. Let me just.
I'm working on it. Oh, no, we did not yet. I started working on this.
I will. Okay, folks, we need a couple of people who will go in the middle of the ETFAT and just write notes. Most of this section may be questions. Can I get any volunteers? We need Jeffrey, that's good. Anyone else? Anything you can do. Guys, ETFAT's a fun way to make, if you make comments, make sure it's on the ETFAT. I'll try, Russ and I'll try to get it. I will then, if you guys don't volunteer, I will listen to the recording.
But it's better if you volunteer, that's why.
Because it made me laugh. Whichever one works, guys. Anything you can do to help?
Yes, we don't need definite email, we just need as many people as we can. Capture as many, particularly if people are flying up to the microphone.
Yes, and saying wonderful things. So, I have a mea culpa. Welcome to the R2S meeting. This is the agenda. Now we are going to do a little more aggressive agenda bashing because I added 2 topics late in the game, and they are at the end of the session. And so my AD...
We have to make sure we have time for timing. Oh.
Yep. My AD wanted me to make sure to tell you that we need to do agenda bashing. Does anyone mind if we add off-state and ephemeral discussion at the end? And and timing operations. If there's any objections, will you please speak up? The ops, I will, the best way, Joel, for you is to simply It's just an idea that Tal has. Tal is going to tell you right now.
Tal Mizrahi, Marvell. This is a topic that I would like to raise. It's something new, so there is no draft about it right now, but it's a new topic, so I'd like to a few minutes to talk about it.
Sue, is it possible?
Pardon? I don't think did you present this before?
Okay, so a bit of background. We're going into the slide itself, but there is an experimental RFC which defines the time capability in netconf. And basically, the idea we want to talk about... No, it's not different. The idea here is to use that capability here in I2RS.
Okay.
Hi, Sue. Is it possible to front load the upstate and ephemeral state discussion?
No, I had to move it because of the request from my AD, and so I don't have an option. No. I would, unless all the working group feels,
All right, so we'll come back then.
unless, well, actually I can do it this way. Folks, does anybody mind if we move the op-state discussion to the beginning? Okay, we will then take the working group and move the op-state to the beginning. I need to do the chair slide. We will then do the op-state. We will then do the filter-based rib and the data center. Any other agenda bashing? Okay, let me go through with the chair stuff. Okay, this is simply a status. I will try to do this within a few minutes. So, at the RFC editors is the R2S protocol security document. At the ISG, probably at its last edits, Benoit is the last holder, and he says, looks good, but he hasn't cleared yet. So I think we're about to go to RFC publication with the ephemeral state in the beginning of December. We are going to the ISG with the draft Yang L2 topology. We're waiting for revision on both of those, and then Benoit's said that he would pass that through quickly. Now, how important is our topology model? Kudos to the folks in this working group that the topology model has actually been the center of many creative things. And thanks to, is Pavan here? Yeah, many of the TEAS folks have been very collaborative along with other people, so we appreciate that. We are waiting for implementation reports. At this point, my suggestion to the working group is we get a little bit more implementation details on the RIB and the filter-based RIB, and maybe even the topology model for L2. The reason is we need to know how complex or non-complex these are. Now, what have Benoit and Aliyah agreed for the protocol work? The protocol work should go to for the ephemeral state, Yang changes should go to netmod. The protocol work, the Yang data modeling work for ephemeral state should go to netmod. The protocol work for netconf or restconf should go to the netconf working group. If the ephemeral state data store is needing to be discussed, it should be discussed within those groups, and we are an incubator protocol discussion. We will give help, we will do the ephemeral data store discussions, and then they will go back for final revision there. Now, if this doesn't work, of course, our friendly AD will help us figure out what to do next. But a multiple stream approach usually works better, including having lots of hallway discussions that I just had when I sent out a draft this morning. How much fun can one have in one day? Okay, now this is just a hackathon report, which I indicated. One of the things I wanted to indicate is I have been working in the security area to see about filters, to see what happens. And the I2NSF group has picked up the R2S group, and then by that, picked up the netmod, restconf, and protocol and the Yang data modeling in order to get filters for network security devices. And a Korean group picked up and took the filters and the capabilities and implemented a simple filter-based RIB VoIP in two places, in a VoIP LTE firewall and a DPA firewall for security devices. It was a 5-month project with a student group based on ODL, Ubuntu Linux, IP tables, and it added. And if you see it, they had a web interface, it was up. And the knowledge we learned is this data model stuff really works. I'm sure the Yang and the NetConf and NetMod groups are saying, yep, we knew. But the point is, for us, what we had to do for the I2NSF group to fit it within the student product is to create a simple version of our filter-based RIB. We may want to think about factoring things into simple and complete and have a model, in which case it will be something to discuss. But it's just a piece of reporting on. I'm hoping that each time we have a report on the feasibility. Now let me go on to the next topic. Aaliyah, the working group asked to hold the off-state discussion in a different order.
Okay, sure.
Okay. So let me go to the off-state, and I'm going to use do a mic talk so that they can see us. Just a minute. Will you just,
Yeah.
hit the next one. There are very few slides in this one. If you just hit the next one.
Can you focus the projector? It's a little bit. Huh.
Yeah, if you can. It would be nice if they, okay, it's a little fuzzy, okay? Life is good. Okay, would you go back up? I forgot something. Thank you. I can do it. Just, I get it.
Because it's fuzzy, do you mind maybe just increasing it and then just moving up and down? That might help.
Okay. I want to compliment the NetMod group on their work in the data store model for OpState. They have created this model, and the thing that's not in this model, and I will step out of this thing, is the policy notes here and the IRQS protocol information there. Everything else comes from their diagram. Little color guys, didn't think the dots worked really well for me. Oh ho, did someone do something?
Right.
Woohoo! Wow,
I'm having fun with your computer, Sid.
that's good. Have fun.
If
Enjoy.
anybody gets a weird email from Sue's computer, don't. It's
Yeah.
fine.
It's the spam from Russ. Okay. So, the blue is the configuration portion of life. We're in configuration. I'm just going to go through the diagram that is in the new OpState model and draw a few ideas for I2RS and engage in some discussion. This is not a formalization. This is a discussion that hopefully will help you discuss further on the mail list and discuss further with the NetMod group. If you have if you look at this diagram, I want to emphasize that the blue is the configuration portion of the model, and the purple with the applied and OpState is the actual read-only portion of the model that might be used by the configuration. On the right-hand side is still part of the model, is a control plane data store 1 and 2, which might be done by ephemeral state. We might have two. It is potentially possible in their model to have one ephemeral state data store or a second. This is in their model. It is not a decision on what we should do. I'm telling you what's possible. The dynamic configuration protocols like DHCP might be able to be had there. Have I made an error in it?
Can't watch some small typo under intended. Instead of CO, I think it's supposed to be RO, read only.
The
Or RW.
RW under
For intended, yeah.
Intended is read write. Thank you. Never mind. It's read write under intended. My bad. Thank you. Okay. So the concept would be that the IR2S protocol would fill up these data stores, and then these data stores for control plane would be merged with intended and installed, and the implied would actually have the data remaining. Okay, so if you have a box, and the box has the intended config, and it decides it's going to implement IR2S, it's like a box that says, okay, I have my intended, I have my IR2S protocol creating my ephemeral data store, and now the box has to decide how to put it together. Okay? We might have, in the architecture document, we said we would have some operator knobs that might tell how we did compared between local config and ephemeral state. There is definitely room for knobs in this diagram. We also said that any conflicting writes for a single ephemeral data store, we would have one pane of glass, and the two writes to the same environment would use the policy system to decide which write one, and the rest would be given an event. And I'm sure you've read all of that in the IR2S work. Okay, any questions on this data model? Because I just wanted you to see it and think about it, because this may factor in our decisions on the list. Okay, go ahead. Now, the implication is twofold. And again, this is future work and not, this is work we have to work on. And the second item, the caching of IR2S client data, is something that we need to think about. One of the things we decided with our first IR2S protocol definition was to go with a set of features. And the features that are in the requirements say one data store, one pane of glass. But many of you were patient as a working group and asked about caching of IR2S client data. Andy has always maintained that it is really difficult to go back and get the data at someplace else and reinstall it. This multiple data stores may allow that, but we would have to sit down and have a working group discussion on anything that would be into the next generation of the protocol. Okay, so this second topic is something I am bringing up to you to think. I will float on the mail list discussions, and we may have interims if there is interest. The first one on configuration validation, as you notice in the diagram, there is much more onus put on the IR2S protocol. If you would go back kindly to the previous slide, where you see the IR2S data protocol setting up the data stores. We've had many discussions in the past about route validation and how we're going to do that in the actual data store. At this point, the model says that that really depends on IR2S, instead of being a set of configuration rules. However, we must do it and have some understanding of what that means in Yang, if you will go back. So we're in the best of all worlds and the worst of all worlds. The best of all worlds is the NetMod designers of OpState have given us what we asked for, that we asked for freedom to be able to set up the validation and to set the implementation. We are in the worst of all worlds. Now we get to design the validation. So this is another topic. I'm introducing these topics because thanks to the good work from NetMod, we now have a new framework to begin to discuss. As Kent will indicate, this is still an individual draft, so we are going to let their discussions go a little farther this week. But if it goes to adoption, then that's what we really need to start talking about. Now, I have finished the introduction. I will go to the questions next and just get a sense of the room. This is off the top of your head and sort of thinking, and I will try since we don't have a scribe, I will try to listen very well to the recording. If I miss it, I asked your forbearance.
But we do
and-
have people on either panel.
Okay, so please, I'd like to, this is not to undo any of the stuff in version 1, but to talk about a version 2. Go ahead, Dean.
Dan Bogdanovic.
Dan.
So when you say support different types of validation, what validations do you have in mind?
Again, what people had asked when I talked to the ODL developers, they were talking about 1 million routes, and they said, gee, they would like to be able to do offline validation and less validation when they install it inside of the ephemeral state model.
Okay, then how will they do validation against the hardware? And I can tell you immediately what for interface and QoS policies, because those will be one of the most interesting ones for the, for the ephemeral. If you want to do offline validation.
I don't have the details from them, but I think my question is whether we should open this discussion. And if you think it's useful, then we should open the discussion for a second round.
If there would be some use cases that will be presented,
Okay.
and then yes, but I would like to see what would be the use case, and that because some of the validation you have to know in an online model because it's hardware dependent.
Yes, thank you. That is a very good input to the chair that I need to get use cases for that. I will ask anyone with that proposal to provide use cases and examples. Is there anyone else would like to give suggested? This is aid to the chair on looking at new topics because we've completed the first round of requirements for Protocol 1, and I'm reopening in this discussion some of these topics. Dan, did you have something else?
On the policy knobs to resolve multiple data store view to the applied configuration view. So if I understood correctly from your previous picture of the, the multiple data stores, so you have the control plane data store 1 and 2, and those are the panes of glass that, are being essentially one over the other.
That is what is being defined in the NetMod model, as far as I understand. Am I correct, Ken? That the control plane, the data store, and the dynamic configuration protocols and the intended would have to be munged, like maybe 3 panes of glass, to come out with the final answer. Joel, I'm not saying what we're doing. I'm just saying what's in the model.
Okay, you asked me.
So it seems to me that we're getting horses and carts backwards. We have a set of agreements on what we need. We have a set of requirements. The NetMod guys and the NetConf guys are trying to address that. Before we run off and try to make more things, let's see how that works. Let's figure out what the real hard questions are when the NetMod and NetConf guys actually try and do the work that they want to do before we go and try to complicate it by adding any more configurations or parameters. Let's solve the problem we've got first.
So your feedback, Joel, that I'm taking as a chair, is that you feel that these discussions should be delayed until we have this data model tied down and the first protocol out with all implementations. Did I understand? Am I restating your
I don't know if we need to wait until we actually have lots of implementations, but let's make some progress on spelling it out, see if we can get some implementation, and make progress on what we've already agreed before we start throwing the cards back up in the air.
Okay, we have implementations and protocols going. Joel, I understand the wisdom in getting things working. I just need a little more detail. Would you prefer to give me detail at the mic or afterward?
Okay. Because my issue is how we had this discussion for over 2 years about panes of glass and how we will merge all together into a single unified view, and how we will do it, and we will just allow it unidirectional or bidirectional from both ways. And I see it here, and in this picture I couldn't figure it out, so I want to get some clarification on that. That's all.
I guess we have the ephemeral requirements draft, which we've already agreed, which you said, it's almost done. It spells out an approach to all of these things.
Yes.
And it is, the other thing that strikes me is it is not the I2RS working group's remit to spell out exactly how netmod and netconf and yang and restconf get modified. I'm very sensitive in wearing other hats to other working groups stepping on my toes. I don't want us. And so your individual draft that I think is motivating this is very specific and seems to go beyond what we had agreed we were trying to do. So what I wanted to do was let the working groups do their job.
The individual draft, Joel, just to be clear, because I think you're mixing my chair duties with my individual contributor duties. I want to be very clear about my chair duties. My chair duties were after the first protocol instance was out to re-ask the question. This presentation is to re-ask the question on what we should do next. My individual drafts, Joel, are individual drafts for another working group.
Okay.
I really am trying to separate them, Joel.
So
Please.
Sorry,
Okay.
Kent Watson, another clarification on this picture.
Mhm.
In the individual draft that we have in NetMod right now, it's actually
Okay, but just to make sure it's an individual draft, and that's not what I'm asking here.
no, that's not where I'm going with this.
Okay.
It has a line that feeds into applied, and it says control plane protocols.
Mm-hmm.
So what's I think intended there is that would be I2RS, for instance. So I2RS is feeding, it is a control plane protocol and is feeding into applied, but within the I2RS control plane protocol, there could be multiple data stores.
Yes.
With whatever mechanisms you want for resolving between them or whatever, right?
Yes.
But all that resolution happens to the side and then feeds in
Yes, correct.
as one thing into the applied.
Even in that draft, all the resolution occurs to the side, as we agreed in protocol version 1. Okay, let me go back to the questions. Joel, thank you for your feedback. I want to make sure if there's someone else. And Joel, I think the last point is what you were emphasized. We need more implementation input on current stuff before we go to 1 and 2. And I do now take that. Is there anyone else that would like to provide input at this time on the next steps? Okay, we will go on to the next presentation. Jan, are you here? Please, you're on next. Thank you. And by the way, our next work is to look at new data models. As Jan gets ready, I will run the slides for you.
Yeah, hello. Hello. Yeah, this is fabric-based management for data center network. So before details of this work, this is non-protocol topology thoughts on what I2IS topology can do. Also, this is an implementation application of the existing I2IS topology models. And it is the idea of this work is implemented in an open source project. So it has some codes for you to review. So next, thank you. So why we come out with these thoughts, why we would provide the fabric-based management for the data center networks. So this on the screen, there are 3 thoughts, 3 points that we think is important. So the first one is faster user service deployment. So for the data center networks, there are many tenants, and each tenant has their requirements of new applications and new services deployed on the networks. So in this case, the data center network should be dynamically be asked to provide their service installation on the networks. And the second one is with the size of the data center network increase, the devices and the technology involved will be increased which also complicated the work of the network management and the service deployment. And the third one is the new technologies can be used. So as we know, the NVL3 are talking about the new technologies for data center. Also, we have the SFC to waiting to deploying the data center network. So that's the new technology should be also applied in the data center network very easily. So the next one is what we would like to do, the motivation of the management. So if we put all the things in just one pocket or in one box, it can be many complex. So in our concept, we would like to divide the whole network management into 3 pieces. Each pieces will be divided, will be dealt by the different type of administrators. So for the service layer, it is for the user service representation. It only cares about what the users wants for the network, and we are not taking too much knowledge about the real devices and the real topology information. While the second one is the fabric topology layer, which is used to manage the data center network fabric topologies. And the bottom one is the physical topology, which cares about the real devices in the network and how to deploy these devices. So how to deal with the problem is we divide the whole problem into 3 layers, and each layers can be managed by different administrators by using the models that we defined in this draft. So the objectives of these 2 drafts is the first one is to provide the fabric topology model to manage the fabric topology, and second one is the fabric service topology model to represent what kind of services for users they want over the data center networks. So next. This is the layering architecture of what we want to achieve in the network. So from the bottom, it's the physical layer. We have devices in the many pieces of devices. Each device is nodes, and there are device modeling things at this layer. And on the second layer, is the topology layer, which is the fabric topology layer in our scenario. So for data center network, all the data center network is composed of several pods, or we can say several fabrics. So each fabrics can be considered as a basic node for this network. So at this layer, we care about what a fabric, what type of technology the fabric use, and also the fabric interconnection. So at the up layer, which is the service layer, it provides logical topology information for the users and let them to express how their networks are connected. As we can see, there are 2 endpoints on the screen. The endpoints can be considered as the hosts used by the tenants. The hosts will be used to connect these 3 layers. The endpoints were provided 2 attachments in this architecture. The first attachment is at the physical layer, and the second one is at the logical layer. So when the host is initiated for some tenants, it will indicate 2 positions in the whole architecture, and then the whole system will know which device and which port in the underlay network is bounded to the ports in the fabric layer, and also bound to the logical layer ports. So this is the whole process for how layering structure would work. So next. So this is using the architecture where we can use the fabric topology model and also the service model. So there is a topology manager which provides the topology information. So as you can see, the fabric service model will not have any idea about the topology information, but only cares what kind of connection between the user endpoints. So next. Yes, this is a fabric service model. It contains two modules. The most important one is the fabric service module. It describes a logical network for users. So there are the basic nodes in this module is the logical routers, logical switchers, and there are also some logical TPs, which act as logical ports. These TPs are all have different roles. Some of them are represented the layer 2 connection, and some of them are represent the layer 3 connection. Also, there are connection to the endpoints. So it's just from the logical network, it can represent or it just shows a connection between the endpoints, what the user look like, their network is look like. So next. So it also provides some info functions as in this module. The most important thing in this module is it bounded the logical ports to underlay ports, so the 3 layers can work together to. So just say some configuration on the logical ports can be mapped to the physical layer ports at the physical networks. So next. So this is the fabric topology model. What is a fabric topology look like? As we said, the data center network is composed of the several ports or several fabrics. So in this concept, we just consider each fabric as a basic node. So for the fabric, there are 3 types of ports, which we call the fabric ports. These ports can be connected to the endpoints, and also this port can be connected to other fabrics, or it can be mapped to the underlay devices. So this is what is the fabric topology layer looks like. So next. Yeah, this is this is implemented in a open source project and which is also released. So you can find the detail of this project on the link on the screen. Also, there are some codes available at the GitHub, which can be found at the GitHub Open Daylight Fast project. So, so we just show some comments, resolution, and updates since last meeting. So there are technical changes. We added how to configure and represent fabric interconnection into these current models, and also we have another draft, which is the fabric service model draft to explain how to use this fabric model to deploy the network in this 3-layer concept. We also provide the better extensibility of this work. So also we thank for the new authors to join our work. So next. Is that the last one?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sean, for the presentation. Do we have any questions on the technical content of the presentation? Not on where it belongs in which working group, but on the technical content. I want to break the two apart. Yes, questions, but yeah. I'm specifying the type of questions, Jeff. Please don't ask, does it belong in Tees or someplace else? We'll deal with that in a second set of questions. This is just clarification or questions about the technology. Thank you.
Do you plan to describe complexity within the server? So relationship between virtual switch, virtual router, endpoints, virtual endpoint within the host?
What, sorry?
You might have a host which has virtual switch, which might have stub virtual router, which might have virtual router, which is in front of virtual switch.
Yeah, do you mean the endpoint can connect to the routers?
All within same node, right?
Yeah, it's the TOR will be the switchers, so the endpoint first attach will go to the switchers in data center networks. So is that the question?
My question, how do you plan to represent it within the model? Which leads to the second question, the notification flow. I think it's very similar the work we are trying to do in TS in multi-layer model. How do you provide workflow of notifications from lower level to higher level, and how do you create feedback reaction in this?
You mean the notification from the under layer to the up
Yeah.
layer? So,
So-
do you mind to go back?
Which one?
The architecture one, yeah.
Okay.
So actually, the endpoint will provide 2 points, 2 attach points from the device at the physical layer, and also another from the logical layers. So when the endpoint is online, so these 3 devices at the 3 ports, the one port at the logical layer, and the second port at the fabric layer, and also the device layer port will be bonded together.
So do you envision daisy chain of notifications going bottom up?
You know, the notification from the up layer to the high layer? Do you mean?
Yeah. Probably we can take it.
Yeah, probably. I haven't think about that.
Any more technical questions on this model? Do we have someone from Tees? Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, just a question that is more related to the what already said by Jasura. In the TIS model, in the TA topology, there is the concept of abstract node. The abstract node.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. If you could just stand just a little closer to the mic. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Sergio Belotti from Nokia. In TIS topology drafts, there is the concept of abstract node. The abstract node can represent a topology.
Mhm.
Exactly, in my view, the layer blue and the layer gray that is represented here. So my question is what is the difference?
Yeah, actually, the layer 2 is for the data center fabric, the port. It has some port-specific things, like which one is the leaf, which node inside the fabric is the leaf, and whether this is the centralized gateway port fabric or the distributed gateway fabric. So it's for data center network port. It might be not so direct to the TIS.
Sincerely, I didn't catch the difference.
The same?
Exactly the same.
There's an open source project from the early teens called OpenS. They also work. It's yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we are checking that.
Okay. Any additional comments, technical wise? Good. I encourage the people who make comments and to top afterwards, because that's one of the reasons we go through models, is to see where there's duplications, where there's not. The real neat thing about data models is hopefully that makes it a little bit clearer. Okay.
Yep.
I am going to go through the next one, which is feedback, as Joel suggested, on one of our existing models.
Okay.
Okay. This is some learning from the hackathon. As Joel suggested, we need to work on learning things from what we had. So I'd like to go through the filter-based RIB and some conclusions we have from the I2NSF demo. I've mentioned it in the beginning, but I want to get some feedback from the working group. Could you go to the next one? Okay. So I think I went through all of this. We found that what we actually implemented, it was initially the I2S filter-based RIB was linked to the ECA policy. The ECA policy came out of some of the super work and matched nicely with the capabilities of firewalls. What we found when we implemented was maybe we should take a simple approach. And it was necessary to be able to get a quick scalable implementation out. Now, the ones that we discussed on the list and presented were a bit more complex because they map to the policy routing. That's what's in the packet ECA, event condition policy. And we don't have ACLs because we were going to try some implementation. The real question is, we really do need to put ACLs in. We're also waiting for some of your draft to sort of fin. Yeah, I know. I agree. It's now time to do something useful, like add to it. You were still changing it last couple months. So we made some additions to the filter-based rib. We added some events. Should we have added them? Should we put ACLs in the current draft, link it in where we have regular filters, or should we put it in a different one? I am looking for some feedback. Dan, if you have some feedback on how you might extend it or how you might work with policy routing, I would be glad to take that. This is general high-level feedback that we learned as we implemented.
I haven't read the draft, on the events, so I can't tell you that in general. The filters, the ACL drafts have been designed just as a essentially match and action containers that you are putting into a single container, and then you augmenting with the match and action statements that are supported by that hardware platform.
And that's a portion of this. The events were just time of day.
And we provided examples how to augment the existing filters, the existing ACLs for different scenarios at the end of that. So they're like they're different versions of it.
I agree, and it's nicely documented. That's a really good documentation in the ACLs. The question is whether we should subsume them under the more complex packet or put them on a side model. It's model refactoring questions. And if no one has a strong thing, we'll try some implementation and see how it goes. I just was looking for any comments on the refactoring. Right? Right now it goes filter-based ribs to the packet ECA to the actual match conditions, right? Here's a packet match, here's a condition and what to do. It only does direct matching because that's what's designed in the packet ECA and matches the policy filters in many boxes. If I put ACLs underneath, it becomes something that's an alternative mechanism because many people do use ACLs in that fashion. The other option is to just put ACLs at a different place. If there's no real strong, somebody's implemented it, we'll leave it as is and try ACLs and then update the model.
Well, we implemented the ACLs and then we found out, some optimizations with it. So for the use case that you're saying, I'm just trying to think from the implementation point of view. And right now I don't have any opinion at the moment, one way or the other.
So the next step is to really implement IP tables using this filter-based thing and use it to do a full policy router. Okay. Anyone else implemented some of this that wants to give feedback? These are just, each time I'm trying to say, this is what we've learned since the last time by implementation. This time we tried, I got someone to work on a firewall. Next time we may be able to get a second implementation on topology. I don't think we've had, has anyone had any 2 implementations to work on the topology data model? Right now, all I know is the ODL, and I don't know of anyone else. I have some people. Fang said he might work with another mechanism. Okay, the next one is timing. Remember, this is just another one of these sort of fact-finding while we're at the end of our requirements one.
Thanks. So my name is Tal Mizrahi. I'm from Marvell. And this is actually not a new idea. This was discussed in the past, but it is discussed for the first time in this working group. And it's mainly important for me to get feedbacks and to see if there's any motivation to keep this work going. Next, please. So we'll start with a simple example. Let's say we have this network, and we want to update the ribs of R1 and R2 to the new paths, which are denoted by after. Next, please. And to do that, we can do 2 route update operations. And since they're not necessarily performed at the same time, we may have some temporary congestion, either on the top left link or on the top right link. Next, please. Okay, so if we could update both routers at the same time, we could avoid this congestion. Okay, so that's one example. Let's see the next slide. So we have a second example. Again, we want to switch from the before to the after state. And we have 3 routers we need to update, R1, R2, and R3. Next, please. So we want to perform a set of operations, not necessarily at the same time in this example. Next, please. For example, we could perform the 3 operations at 3 different update times, T1, T2, T3, so that T3 is greater than T2, which is greater than T1. And if we could do that, maybe it would help us out. Next, please. So what are we proposing here? So first of all, earlier this year, RFC 7758 was published as experimental. It defines the time capability in netconf. And what we're proposing here is to leverage the time capability. And actually, we may be able to apply it to the RIB data model, to the data model which is defined in the current working group. So, for example, we can have a route add operation which includes the scheduled time operation, so the scheduled time parameter. So this can define for this route add when the router is expected to perform the route add. So this specifies the time at which we expect this RPC to be actually performed. Next, please. So the main purpose of this short slot is to get feedback, to see if there's any...
Guys, let him at least finish, then we'll have comments.
I think if there's motivation in the working group to pursue this, we may proceed with actually writing drafts about this.
Dan Bogdanovic. So the only, how will you know, or how the system will know what is the current load of the control plane on the device, and how long will it take to process that and push it down? Because this is an unknown. So you can time it, but you don't know when that will be active on the wire. And that time difference between the applied config, and what's getting down on the wire is an unknown. It depends on this, from a device to the device. And you will get consistently out of syncs, your network will be consistently out of sync on that perspective.
So let me see if I understand the question. You're saying that we're not sure what's the propagation delay between the client and the server. So this may affect the internal delay in the device. Okay, so basically it's an implementation question of how do we guarantee that the server or the router actually performs the update exactly at the time it was meant to perform the update. Okay, so can we go 2 slides ahead, please?
Certainly, I would be glad to. But this way.
2 slides ahead, not backwards.
But tell me when.
Go down. Slide 10, 11. Great. Okay. So the question is actually, can we perform operations in an accurate way? It's an implementation question.
No.
That's not the question?
No, that is a question, but that's not the answer. Because this is, at the silicon level, but I'm asking you, when you hit the CPU on the device, that CPU on the device, the question is, how will I know from the CPU on the device to your silicon down? That's my question.
Once, yeah.
If you okay, look.
Wait, I want to answer the question.
Tal, if I may. If you assume that the hardware underlying has time capability, then yes, you can make it happen magically.
Right.
But from a point of view of a protocol design, we can't design around that assumption. And that was and if you don't make that assumption, if you assume there's a route control processor that is controlling the line card and changing its state when it wants to change its state, which is the way we normally think about these things, there is a time delay. But I actually have a much bigger problem here. We spent a significant amount of time in this working group looking at this question. We debated a number of dimensions of this because it turns out that in trying to combine this with I2RS, there are a lot of complexities that arise. And we decided, no, we don't want to deal with, for example, wait a minute, I have a preemption, so this is gone, but maybe by the time it really takes effect, the preemption will be gone, and so it should take effect. And so we looked at keeping whole piles of state and so unwinding state, and we said, no, we're not doing that. I'd really like us to finish the current work before we create something with that large a complexity footprint. I understand why it looks simple from where you sit and useful from where you sit. But when we look at it in the I2RS context, it is a very large headache. So I'm really uncomfortable with it.
So Joel, your feedback to the chair and to our work items is put this off till later. Did I understand that?
I think there's a lot of complexity.
I still haven't answered the question.
Should go think about it while we make progress on other things.
One conversation, Tal would like you to answer a question too.
So I think Joel, you asked an answer, but I do want to address Deanne's question. So this solves it at the silicon level. So there's software and there's silicon. The software installs the update ahead of time, a second ahead of time, half a second ahead of time. The silicon actually makes the decision. That's the idea here. And that's why we guarantee that the update is actually performed exactly at the time we wanted it to be performed.
What can happen in that 1 second in the network? It can change what you really want to do, and what you install in the silicon can be obsoleted because of the events that has changed. Because the delay, there are events, and then you don't know what network state you're changing.
Okay, the software can cancel. Once it's installed in the silicon, software can access and cancel it. I agree, these are implementation questions that we do need to think about and address, but if you're asking me as an implementer, is it possible? Yes, it's possible. We can't dismiss it saying it's not possible. Is it difficult? Maybe.
Yifeng, you had a comment.
Xufeng Liu from Qualtrics. Not about the use case, so about the mechanism. Yesterday, we presented the configuration scheduling mechanism draft in the net mode working group. And so you may want to check and see if that's satisfied for this kind of thing. We have several separate different use cases in our mind. We want to schedule resources on particular schedules, so like LSPs, T-links. That's what being implemented in T's working group. But the scheduling mechanism is similar, right? So it's the same thing. Besides that, there's already a mechanism for the RPC scheduling, so which is already available. If it's a one-time scheduling, you can use that. If it's repeated, we need that put into data store. We are currently proposing a configuration scheduling mechanism in net mode.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. This hits the end of our agenda, and thank you all for being patient to give the chair details. Thank you.
All right, I think I got all of it. Who knows?
It just says do more implementation.
Yeah, no, I know.
And I was trying to get. Oh, I really absolutely.
I have just another picture for my interview. This sun cloud.
Oh, no, I'm going to. Thank you.
Once I'm on that, I don't know how to do it again.
Yeah, I've done it 3 times and I'm done with it. Hey, Tal.
I have a full 15 minutes.
That's fine. You just tell me when.
So,
Michael Behringer
so,
and Gonzo. 6:30 would be great. Should I make it 6:30 or should I tell them? Or I'll send an email to everybody. This whole discussion missed something on the timing. Quite often, precise time is not important. Relative time is important. So we could do relative time first and worry about absolute time later. And Joel's comment doesn't apply to relative time. Neither does David's.
but I learned a lot about where everything is.